Hello, legends. Have I got a guest for you? Check this out.
Graeme.
Yes, kind of gave it away there, Didn't I? We're going to be talking to the wonderful Graeme Moore, aka Daddy Dragon. Let's get into it. Graeme, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for the invite back on the show.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Graeme. Yeah, always. We're indebted to you for your work during all the medical nonsense. A certain paper which parents were able to take into school to say, "Oi, not my child. Thank you very much."
Yeah.
And I'll never, as a parent myself, mate. Yeah, I don't forget that kind of courage. Stepping up to the plate, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, no, it is. And people do say to me, what's it like going up, are you not frightened of the state? My dad, who's 95, says to me, no, no, Graham, trust the government. And then he says, you've got to stop what you're doing, they'll nut you off. And I say to him, Dad, which one is it? Do you trust them or they're going to nut me off? Which is it? I'm confused, Dad, But there you go.
Yeah, it is the old trauma-based mind control, which I would say everybody's under. I mean, no one says hello anymore, Graeme. They're so damaged out there, and I mean that no disrespect. I'll purposely do the opposite. I say hello, good morning, how are you? Can I help with your bags? To the older ones. And yeah, we're all under fear-based mind control. But there is a balance, isn't there? I mean, the other day we chatted about this briefly. We did 3 podcasts on a certain incident. Might have been in Liverpool. I think people might know what I'm talking about. And then I was reflecting, thinking, hang on, this has gone to court now. Maybe this is contempt of court. Putting out our narrative because we always do the alternative. So I wasn't afraid, Graeme. I said to the missus, right, if the coppers rock up tonight and take me, don't worry about it. And her response was, well, that's easy for you to say. I've got the little one to deal with. And then I spoke with my podcast manager and he's like, take him down, Chris. You need to live to fight another day. And we was getting 500 subscribers a day off those videos, Graeme,
Yeah.
So it is funny. How have you survived? Because you must have come under attack and
There's before I go into what they've done and they haven't done to me. I'll just make a quick comment on that situation, but won't actually talk about the current case because it is sub judice. I just think it's very odd, Chris, that a month ago, a wonderful, young, fit, intelligent Royal Marine did a survey and he was dragged in, You know, they took him by helicopter from his unit into the Ministry of Defence in London. Like they did this big grilling on him, and it was all about DEI. And he stood up and he asked the rest, or quite a few men, and I think over 1,000 Royal Marines had come on this survey and said, no, we don't agree with it. You know, it just seems funny that was all promoted. That went semi-viral. And then a month later, someone is dragged through the media, and the core is dragged through the media for such an event. So that's all I'll say on it. I just think it's a bit too coincidental.
Well, let's take that one step further, because not only, Graeme, did I chat with Jamie Michael the other day. I'm just going to show, when I'm looking across, mate, it's because I got the other screen. I'm showing people stuff. So I'm just showing my podcast with a wonderful Jamie Michael, who's an absolute legend. He went to prison for a Facebook post, and it wasn't even controversial, Graeme. He just said, you know, we got to look out now, folks. There's stuff out there. There's not safe on, you know, there's people out there. They're not safe on our streets. We've got our little ones to be concerned about, and we need to sort of network a bit and get a bit of community spirit just to, you know, keep tabs on things. Bloody hell, his local MP reported him to the Rozzers. Next thing you know, they came. He's a former Royal Marine who served his country. Now, I'm not going to get in the politics of war. People know what I'm on about. But the fact is, you know, he's a lovely bloke, and yet these young thug coppers who probably don't even, you know who the Royal Marines are, basically beat him up and chucked him in the paddy wagon and carted him off in front of his missus, you know. And I say that loosely, beating up. I mean, you know, they didn't muck around, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So you've got that, and that's got an awful lot of press. All it's done is help the cause, Graeme, you know?
Yeah. No,
and then, of course, you've got another certain former member of the Special Forces, the Special Boat Service, Ant Middleton, who's also speaking out about, in this case, you know, getting our country back. So you are right, mate. It does
stink.
Yeah, it does make you prick your ears up, doesn't it? And you'd be a bit blind or deaf.
Not to understand what's going on there. But yes. I mean, I didn't know that Ant Middleton until we had the brief conversation was SBS and a Royal Marine. I knew he was military in some way, but I didn't know what exactly he was. But getting back to a number of things, I mean, what you've just said about that guy being arrested and beat up. So one of our cases in the High Court, which has now gone on for 5 years, is with Charlie Staple, and we've got a directions hearing next week in the court, and that is suing the police, and there is a torture element to that, and that was because of the lockdowns, etc. They beat him up, arrested him, had him in a prone position. He didn't show any resistance to them. They tried to suffocate him when he was handcuffed by putting their gloves over his nose and mouth, etc., which is a criminal offence, by the way. So that's leading on, and we've got a trial coming up in front of a jury for tort, right? So there's a large claim, and the High Court have already said to us, yes, they are personally responsible, right? It's not vicariously. In other words, they tried just to allow it to be the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, and what we've said is no. Under their oath states that they are individually responsible, which means if a jury finds them liable for the offences, they have to pay the money, not the taxpayer, right? So we could end up taking their houses off them. And again, it's a punitive. We're going for what's known as a punitive award. So there's that one. But just to let you know, I mean, we've been taken down getting 3 times an hour off of YouTube. Even last year, under Elon Musk, was taken down just as our account gets up to 10,000. It's not the first time. The last one was 15,000. Every time we get anywhere, they bring the channels or the platform down. I'm now on obviously Rumble with a full English show, and I think I've got now 8,000. I think it's just under 8,500. There's 2 channels, but one channel's 8,000 subscribers, which is doing quite well, and it is a freedom of speech channel. So you don't have to moderate your content. You obviously moderate your channel for really bad remarks, which we do. We've got great moderators. But the actual freedom of speech, you just do it. So we've had lots of things going on. Apart from the fact, by the way, I've lost, I think, 6 stone through getting. And by the way, I have been very much inspired by you to do that. So I've got myself, because I know eventually, in some way or the other, we're going to have to fight to get our country back from the communists, and that is what's happening. So I've lost in the region of 6 stone through fasting. My longest fast was 21 days. I'm on another fast now, by the way, and healthy eating and essential minerals, vitamins, and amino acids, etc., and just feel fantastic.
You look $1 million, mate, and I'm not taking a mick.
Thank you.
What about the old ciggies? You gave them up a while ago, didn't you?
I've given them up a long time ago. I went out to Portugal recently on a freedom yacht, I must say. You'd love to speak to Tim, Captain Tim, SV Boreal. And what he's done is sailed all around the world, believe it or not, without a passport. It really interests you in some of the things, because obviously it's a sea thing as well, and going into different ports. But he refused to have a passport. It's actually a common law right to travel without a passport, right? So, and it's a constitutional fundamental. Believe it or not, Sir William Wade wrote about it in the Hamlin lectures, and yeah, so he's been doing that. So when I was out in Portugal, I did have a few cigars, but only because they was cheap.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a simple one. I say this a lot. We got to fight the battle. The physical battle is understanding the mechanics, which I know you know very well. The way that England was basically, co-opted into Great Britain, of which, we're not. We lost our sovereignty. Yeah. The Bill of Rights, or you can tell our audience about this, Graeme, but that was disempowered.
There's a hat.
Yeah, and then they
and that one, and then on the side you've got the Constitution is the solution, and they're flying out because people understand exactly what it means. Yeah, no.
And exactly. Then and then they're trying to make the UK. So we've all lost one layer of identity, and we're subject to a government that's not that's not specifically in the English interest. And then, of course, it's co-opted, if that's the right word, into bloody Europe, which they're now, under Starmer, obviously, he's going to drag us all back there, because I'm guessing that's the New World Order, plan. But you understand all this very well. What I say to people when they come to me hopeless, Chris, what can we do? I say, what are you doing? What exercise have you done today?
Yeah.
How much did you drink last night? How much drugs are you taking? How much meditation have you done? You doing a hot shower, cold shower? Are you jogging around the block in the morning, or going for a swim, or just having a walk to be one with the universe of which you are, and which these fuckers don't ever want you to know? And you're embodying that, Graeme. And then also, smoking. What is it? It's what they want you to do, isn't it? You know, you can't be a freedom fighter if you're playing their game. It's a choice, isn't it? You either play, you play for the devil side, or you play play for the side of righteousness. I'm not lecturing, Graeme. I was off my head for 35 years, and it is what it is. But
No, I agree with you. All right, no, so what you've just said is absolutely bang on the money. I mean, I had a heart attack some years ago. In fact, it was in 2018, and I had all this medication. And it made me worse. They put me on all these things. I threw the whole lot away. I don't take the medication. I take the what we call the essential 90, the amino acids, and etc. I went on fasting. By the way, it's in the Bible. It is safe. And the exercise, everything that you've just said. But the whole point is, there's so many of these people out there that are eating badly. I mean, processed foods are probably one of the worst things you can eat. You're actually doing the job of the ruling classes who basically want us gone. So you have to think about what you're doing as an individual, for us to work together and move forward as a group and a country. And by the way, they're doing that now in America. They've got Make America Healthy Again. And that's exactly what we should be doing.
Yes, I'm just showing a quote from Matthew 17:21. There is nothing that can't be cured by fasting and prayer.
Yeah.
And what the Bible really means by prayer, not what the churches will tell you, is prayer's not asking for a new mountain bike for Christmas. Prayer's meditation, is communing with spirit, with the energy in the universe. And when you commune, you get all the answers. So, yeah, Graeme, congrats again, mate. Commendable. What do you want to talk about, Graeme? I'll dip in. Friends at home, can I just say, Graeme's my mate. I love him to bits. He's on my show so I can chat with him. I think some of you mistake podcasts for BBC interviews, and we don't do that. I'm not here to stitch my guests up or sit here like a muppet not saying anything. He's my mate. I want to share information with him so he can go away and take some of the stuff I know and share it with his people. I can take Graeme's stuff, share it with my people. So, I'm just saying that because a lot of people get confused, Graeme. They're like, you're the host. Why are you speaking?
Yeah. No, I get. No, I absolutely get it. Obviously, we've got a show on Rumble as well. So just to bring everyone up to speed, I stood in Runcorn and Helsby by-election. We had a fantastic campaign, but we was harassed. Bearing in mind, I stand for the disabled, people, obviously with disability, and pensioners. We stand for the number one human right, which is self-determination, which I will highlight to people if you want me to run through that and what it actually means, versus a political union, which is what the British Union is, right? So, in other words, going back to what we was, which was dominions, a commonwealth, and a brotherhood of nations. It's the actual political unions that cause problems, just like the USSR, Soviet Union, just like the European Union. They're stepping stones to the New World Order. So the antithesis to globalization is what we describe as nationism, not nationalism, nationism, where you believe in your people and it's distributed governance with the people. So we stood in that election. The Royal Mail didn't deliver our approved election communication leaflets. They said they did. The police harassed our campaign. Again, we got evidence of that. And finally, the actual Runcorn and Helsby count. Obviously, Sarah Pouchin was elected as Member of Parliament. but I received, so they say in the return, 50 votes. Well, I was there. And there were two bundles of 50 and a little bit extras. Now, there's only 6 votes in it, right? Originally, they said 4 votes. They done some sort of recount. It was a bundle recount, and then they found another 2 votes, and they said it was 6 votes in it, basically. So Sarah Patchin won. The point being that we'd witnessed at the count that we had well in excess of 50 votes. But I want people who are listening to this to remember something. 50 votes, right? So at a by-election, the bundles are bundled in 50. They're clipped at 50. Well, 9 years prior, in a place called Tooting in South London, I stood in another high-profile election where Sadiq Khan, everyone should remember Sadiq Khan, the Fabian executive member, and obviously the mayor of London. And he stood down from being a member of parliament to become the mayor. And I stood in his constituency, which was, it's literally Tooting's about a mile away from where I was born in South London. And guess what? I got exactly 50 votes, right? So remember that bundle? 50, 50. So we said, this isn't right. I calculated it was 40,000 elections to 1 to get that result. In fact, from my knowledge, no candidate ever, anywhere, has ever got exactly the same election count, right? But it takes somewhere like 400 years. But then someone from the Royal Statistical Society got in touch with me and said, Graeme, you're wrong. And I said, oh, okay, well, let me know how I'm wrong. And he said, yeah, it's not 40,000 elections to 1. It's 1 million elections to 1. And I said, tell me what your working out is. And he said, well, I won't just do that. If you want to accept it, I will do an expert witness statement of why it is 1 million to 1. And it is strong evidence that there is serious skullduggery at the count. Now, people watching this will know that someone else called Billy Howarth on the same evening in a different area caught the Labour Party cheating at his count, where they were stealing hundreds of votes and putting them on the Labour pile. So obviously there is a return problem now. Just to give the audience an indication, when I stood in Chorley, which is just up the road from Runcorn and Helsby, not just up the road, but some miles up the road, but still in the north in Lancashire, that is, not in Cheshire, I received 1,007 votes. So 50 is a very odd situation, considering I got the same number 9 years prior, different demographic, completely different by-election, both high profile. It's almost as if someone's suppressing our votes. It just happens to be highly illegal, unconstitutional, and again, there's a constitutional precedent that was set in 1703 called Ashby versus White. Well, it doesn't matter if it changes or doesn't change the election result. The fact is, it is your right to, 1, to vote, and 2, to stand in an election. And if you go back in constitutional law, all the way back to the first statute of Westminster in 1275, chapter 5, it states free elections, and it is a serious criminal offence. And then obviously you've got the Representation of the People's Act 1983, etc., etc., etc. So what did we do? Well, you've got 21 days after any election in the common law court, King's Bench Division of the High Court, to bring what's known as an election petition. Right, so just to make sure your audience are aware, and what you'll see on there is the stamp. So I created the election petition, put some of the evidence forward, and we've got witness statements coming forward all the time. And if there's anyone listening to this in Runcorn and Helsby that, 1, did not receive our Royal Mail, there's a standard witness statement If you didn't receive the Royal Mail leaflet, which is an election, it's a criminal offence not to deliver it. We need a statement from you. You won't be called, but it will be as read. In other words, you don't have to give evidence in chief, which means cross-examination. It's so simple, right? I didn't receive the leaflet. It's a criminal offence, and they've already said that they delivered them all. We know that they didn't. But secondly, on all of this, if anyone voted for us and you want to come forward, please do, because this is this can actually bring down the government, because we know that they did the same. It's the same MO. It happened before in Batley and Spen with George Galloway. I don't agree with George Galloway's politics, but I did make a witness statement because I was at the count for Batley and Spen, etc. So we've created this election petition. There are 4 respondents, which is the Chief Constable of Cheshire, who is now engaging with me. It is the returning officer for Halton Council. Believe it or not, Emma Gilthorpe, the CEO of the Royal Mail Group Limited, and also Sarah Pouchin, who is the only person who hasn't responded, which, you know, if people really want to believe that Reform are different, right, they haven't even bothered responding, right? That's not a good look when there's some accusation of cheating in an election. And the last person that has to be notified is the Department of Public Prosecutions, because it is a very serious criminal offence. And all of that has been done under the regulations and the laws, and it is a common law court. And we have a hearing on June the 13th of this month for a directions hearing. So just to make sure your audience are aware of this, what happens then is that the respondents come to court. The directions to trial judges normally then set the trial and the trial date, and the trial will be in, so a bit like in the old days where you had an assize court, as they used to be known, where the judges moved around. 2 High Court judges go to Runcorn and Helsby. They basically commandeer an area as a court, and the registrar is a Supreme Court justice. So if anyone out there thinks we are not holding anyone to account, we most certainly are, right? And the point is, if you have a right, you must claim it. It's very important, because otherwise you lose it. That is the law, right? So we're claiming this right. I'm claiming private right. It's what's known as private right injury. And also we're putting forward the criminal aspects of what they've done. So that is what we've done. And again, if you're going to cheat against a group of people that stand for disabled people, pensioners, self-determination, the #1 human right in the world, bar none, no usury. Everyone should understand we stand for no usury. It's our principal policy as a Christian party and group as well, which basically means that you're not allowed to, the banks are not allowed to charge you usury or interest. And yes, there are other ways of doing it, right? It's in the Bible that it is actually a sin. So again, we're standing up for the people, but we need the people to help us. And just to make sure everyone's aware of this, again, we're using the Housebury's Laws of England, which is the common law, and it's really important that people understand that. And just in case people think that this is a green screen, it certainly isn't. We're also using Housebury statutes, and as you can see, many people fire back and say we haven't got a constitution. And what I say to them, what is that? Volume 10, Constitutional Law. And as you can see, it is literally one of my favourite books, as you would expect from an English constitutionalist. So we are using the full weight of foundational English law against the criminals that have attacked our rights. And if they attack my rights and the electorate's right in Runcorn and Helsby, they attack your audience rights to vote. And it is a serious criminal offence. So just to make sure everyone understands. On June the 13th of this month, everyone is being held accountable. It's cost us just over £6,000 so far. And again, without disrespect to anyone else, I haven't got a villa in Spain, not naming names. I'm not driving around in flash cars. I haven't got a whole team, or I'm not interested in designer gear, etc. I represent, so there's no one else representing the English Constitution Society or the English Constitution Party or us. It is me standing up in that court talking to 2 High Court judges and a Supreme Court judge.
Yes, well done for standing up for the law, for standing up for the people. It's a funny one, Graeme, this for me. I'll tell you why. I've never voted. I've always said I never will. Let me explain something. So you got Conservative is blue. You got, was it Labour is red? In America, it's the
reverse. It's the reverse. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Democrats are blue, and the Republicans are red.
Yeah.
Weird.
Same colours in a boxing match. Boxing obviously being a distraction. Not saying it's not a great sport, but it's in the grand scheme of what's going on, it's obviously another distraction. So from an esoteric's point of view, and let's remember that's the language that these fuckers speak, right? Numerology, gematria, codes, signs, symbols. So your blue is your moon, your feminine. Your red is your sun. That's your masculine. Moon is your magnetism. Sun is your electric, hence electromagnetism. Now, it's symbolic of you hearing esoterics as above, so below. So you've got a torus field, which is the greater universe. You've got your pineal and your pituitary, which is your electromagnetism in your being. So as above, so below.
Yeah.
We go back to our scripture. You've got Adam and Eve going east of Eden. So that's allegory for accessing the right hemisphere of the brain. So you got a lot of, indoctrinated people around, haven't we? Very good at doing and pushing crunching numbers and following orders. But the love, the peace, the kindness, the empathy, but moreover, tuning the pineal and the pituitary to create the right electromagnetic field so that it connects at the right frequency with the bigger picture, right? A parable about this, there's one, what's his name? Jacob. So Jacob arrives at a spring, a brook, little river. In allegory, crossing water is a symbol of going from base consciousness, like what I call living in the matrix, to the start of the journey to enlightened consciousness. It's the same as Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt, which is lower self, across water and into the promised land. That's your milk and your honey from your serotonin and DMT from your pineal and your pituitary. Now Jacob gets to this river, he wrestles an angel. Angel, that's your angles of light, your photons, your information, your source code, right? Now, he wrestles with this angel. He's like all of us. He's wrestling with a lot of things, a lot of information. He's trying to be the good person that we all try to be, but we're all tempted, aren't we, by the bottle of wine, by the pornography, by the oh, he said this about me, and I'll slag him off on foot, and all of this wealth of stuff that drags us from heaven and essentially places us in in sin, in hell. Sin, by the way, as anyone who knows Latin, it just means to go without spirit, to go without paradise, right? So he wrestles this angel and he gets dislocated at the hip. Dislocating at the hip is the symbolism of cutting away his lower self, his bestial, his animal self, to live in what they say in the East, the upper chakras, right? And as a result, he gets the name from universe, which they call God in a Bible source. He gets the name Israel. Is Isis, feminine god. Ra, sun god, masculine. Is magnetism. Ra, electromagnetism. Elohim is like the divine spirit, the gods. So he's there, he's reflecting at this brook, he's got all this information come at him, he has his epiphany, he moves to the right hemisphere of his brain. As Jesus said, throw the net on the other side of the boat. Adam and Eve went east of Eden, all the same story. And as a result, he syncs his left and right hemispheres as his brain, steps on the path to enlightenment, cuts away his lower self, his bestial animal self, and gets the name Israel, electromagnetism, male and female, the enlightened one, essentially, right? They colour politics for a reason, Graeme, because they laugh when humans go, oh, I'm going to vote for red this time because they're going to do tax credits. No, I'm going to go for blue because they're going to build more pedestrian crossings and, give people a fuel and that. What I'm saying, and I did get there quickly, by the way. I have been known to go on longer. How can you change such a corrupt, such a deep system that goes back 8,000 years to when the Babylonian psychopaths, the merchants, the lenders that JC threw out the temple, which again is allegory. It's allegory for, if we allow money lending, usury, charging with interest, you condemn the whole planet to slavery. And that is where we're going, is where we are now, right?
Correct.
So knowing all this, knowing the depths of this narrative, which people listening now, I fully understand if you're like, Chris, what the fuck are you talking about, son? Because I was like that 8 years ago when I first started listening to John St. Julian, thinking, what, Jesus slept on a boat? What? Hang on.
Yeah.
So the point I'm getting at, Graeme, is how's your party going to be different? How can you change a corrupt system by signing up to that exact same corrupt system? And is your Christianity going to be based on an understanding of the Christic, the Christ consciousness, aka sacred secretion, which is your land of milk and honey? Or are you going to say, no, Chris, one step at a time? Over to you, brother.
Right. So you've hit on a number of things. What many people don't know about me is that when I was 24 years old, I was in a coma and I died, and I crossed over to the other side. The doctors all said if he did come out of this coma, he would never walk again, never speak again. He would be completely a vegetative state, and they asked for my organs. And lucky enough, my dad said no, right? Even though I was married, 2 young children, etc. I was very fit because I was boxing and training and working at the time. But here's the kicker. My mum died a year before, and I see her on the other side. And she was speaking to someone who I took to be God, and there were 2 doors. she was crying and speaking to God and me and telling me to go back through there was two doors, the right hand white door. It was a white room, very, very light and bright. And he wanted me to go back through the other door. She was saying, please don't go through that door. Please let him go back through the other door. What I didn't know, and I wasn't religious, was people all over the world, born again Christians, were praying for me. And he bowed his head and was listening. I didn't know what he was doing. It was only later that I found out lots of people was praying for me. But when he looked up, he said, go back through that door. So the same door that my mum had pointed to, I went through that door and I come out of the coma. I was speaking, I was walking. They said I'd never walk again. All of these different things. And by the way, I had a virus, right? It was from chickenpox. And if anyone watching this, I had something called encephalitis. But one part of my brain had been damaged so badly that the other part took over. Completely, but the other side of my brain started to repair. So everyone said when he come out of the coma and he started repairing, my family said it's almost like he's a genius, right? He does all these things, he never done them before, except that I learned to program a computer in 3 weeks, for example, right? Never touched a computer in my life. And what the doctors and the people who had scanned my brain said to me is, both sides of your brain are now fully operating, which is unusual, right? So that's the first thing. I've met many other people in our movement who have died and come back. I call us the tomorrow people, right? We've been to the other side, we've come back, and we push forward for good, right? So getting back to a couple of things you've said there. First of all, it is a universal, if you want to call it that, right to vote. It's an inalienable right. Many civilians, and I'm particularly talking about a place called Peterloo, just outside Manchester, it was Petersfield, in 1819, just after the Waterloo War, working class people didn't have the vote. So 70,000 people joined protests, right, with Spitalfields Market in London, Birmingham. They was making declarations not to pay tax, right, which is causing a lot of problems for the British regime or the ruling classes. But here's the kicker. They demanded the vote. Unarmed, 70,000 of them at Peterloo, where we've done an event previously. And the British, and particularly the Cheshire Yeomanry, on the orders of a magistrate and the king, charged the crowd, and they killed men, women, and the babes in arms. And all of those people, all they did was stood up for their right to vote, right? So just to make sure I'm clear on this, all right? When you don't vote, you are complicit with the ruling class and the evil. Ashby versus White 1703 is a constitutional, it is entrenched in our law that every vote must be counted. So you don't have to vote for me, and I'll get back to what we stand for in a couple of minutes. And trust me, Chris, it's not rocket science what we stand for. We're not like anyone else, as you can imagine, right? But this is the kicker. You can write on your ballot completely lawfully, and it must be counted, I do not consent. And then if you want to highlight that at the bottom, Ashby versus White 1703, right? They have to take that and they count the vote in the turnout. And at the end of the count, so when they're coming up to actually do what the return is, they have to count up all what they describe as spoilt ballots. In other words, you're not voting for a candidate. So instead of writing, and you excuse my language on this, a cock and bollocks jurings, right? Some of them are quite funny, right? But if you actually write, I do not consent, Ashby versus White 1703, if that pile is higher than any of the single candidates, including the one that they say has won it, right? You create what's known as a constitutional crisis because they cannot return to Parliament the candidate that they say won when the pile for I do not consent is greater. So therefore, it has to go to an election court, which I'm in now, right? And it brings in the powers of separation, the separation of powers. That is the three estates of the realm. The monarch, which was involved with Ashby versus White 1703, and again Queen Anne prorogued Parliament because she didn't believe that Parliament had the right or the audacity to debate the rights of an Englishman. So she prorogued Parliament to stop it, right? So again, it brought the Parliament into a court case, and it also brought in the judiciary. And the judiciary said, no, we are one of the separate powers of this realm constitutionally, and what you've done, they basically stopped a voter from voting. So just to make sure everyone's aware, right? You can do that without voting for us, without voting Conservative, Reform. If you've ever heard of the what's known as a protest vote, the constitutional protest vote is I do not consent, Ashby versus White 1703. But, so my point to you all is, and again, I want everyone to remember babies, literally a baby in arm, got run through by the Cheshire Yeomanry for your right to vote. So anyone who stays at home and says, no, I'm not voting, it's all corrupt, I get that. But no revolution has ever been won by doing nothing, right? You don't fight a war without some brave person standing up for you, right? Someone has to do something, right? So that's the first thing. And that's all I'm going to express to your audience. Most importantly, what do we stand for, right? So everyone should understand this. And I had a fight with the election commission to get us registered. They did not like it, right? They didn't want to allow us to register the English Constitution Party, right? And then our manifesto. So the brand, right, is England as a nation, right? Because Britain is not a nation; it's an island, right? And it's called Great Britain. And it was called Great Britain because it contained three nations. That was Scotland, England, and Wales, right? And Wales become part of England because of a English king whose heritage was Welsh, right? And that was in 1536, right? So it was a very long time ago. I've got no issues whatsoever with the Welsh being completely independent. But here's the kicker, people. The political, so we already had what's known as the Union of the Crowns in 1603. It was a Brotherhood of Nations, Dominions of England, which means they was independent, right? And then the British come along in 1706, 1707. 70 years later, they attacked the English colonies in America, which is where you got the War of Independence from. And what did they say? Those migrants to America, they stood up and said, we want the same rights as an Englishman, right? That's what the War of Independence was about, that they wanted the same rights as us. So people must stand up. So the brand is England, right? And that manifesto, and this is the bit that you'll probably love, right? Is our manifesto is the English Constitution and common law rights. That's it. So when we've put all of this into a manifesto and what we actually stand for, bear in mind self-determination, number one human right, it is the antithesis to globalization and to the ruling classes. Once we put that in there, people can now vote for what a member of parliament should be doing, right? Which is simply, you're there to represent your constituents, not a political party. We're just a brand. So if you think of all the independents out there, what we say to them is, it's not about you. It's not about a political party. It's about your constituents, and you having the ability to air their grievances in Parliament to the Crown and to Parliament. That's what your job is, solely. So what you're looking for, and by the way, the job of a member of Parliament is to protect your rights and the constituents from the power of the state, right? So again, Parliament, by the way, is not sovereign. It never has been. There's a number of people who have said that. Sir William Wade, Sir John Laws, Sir Stephen Stevens. What's the other one? There was another one I'm trying to think of. Sir Edward Cook. So people need to understand that. But once you understand that, getting back to you must vote, right? And the way America are taking back America, there's arguments at 2 and 4 and what's going on out there at the moment. But I will tell you this. They are emphasizing the Constitution of America. Where did it come from? It came from England, not the British. It came from England, right? So just remember that Joseph Stalin created the term Soviet or Soviet citizen. He was the commissar of the Soviet Union, the USSR, communist. And I want everyone to remember this. The British did the same with the British Nationality Act of 1981 and the British Nationality Act 1947, and it went all the way back to 1708, I think it was. But we was warned in the late 1600s, don't do this, right, with the British Nationality Act. And we actually null and voided a brief entry into where we allowed Protestants, and it was nothing to do with race, they was white, into the country, and they overwhelmed our country, and we voided the law and said no more. That's it. They're all going back, basically. And they was white people from Europe, right? But they was trying to get away from the turmoil in England. So you have to understand, don't forget, England is 1,100 years old, right? So it's not, and remember, by the way, if we want to talk about the oath system, King Alfred dealt with 44 judges who had perjured their oath, right? So I'm not talking about going into the witness box and committing perjury if you tell a lie in a witness box. That's a criminal offence. I'm talking about an offence that is in common law is on par with treason, right? And it's being an official and perjuring your oath. In other words, you do something that goes against what your oath is, right? And King Alfred dealt with that. And he hanged 44 judges for perjuring their oaths, right? So if anyone out there thinks the law has no teeth, it only has teeth when you stand up, which is what we're doing in the election petition court, etc. Listen, we may lose, right? But there's one sure way to fail, and that's not to try. And that's why I say to people, listen, you may hate the system. I get it's corrupt to the core, and it absolutely is, right? But right on that ballot, I do not consent, Ashby versus White, because at least then you are respecting the people that fought and died for our rights.
Yes, good point, Graeme. And I have heard that mentioned quite a lot recently. Is that what's referred to as a spoiled?
Yeah, so they refer to it as a spoilt ballot. There is no such thing as a spoilt ballot. It's the terminology they're imposing on it. It is your ballot, and it must be counted by law.
Would it not be, let's not take too long on this because there's other stuff I want to ask you, but I live in carrot cruncher land.
Yeah.
The person in that porter cabin counting them all up at the end would probably look at that and they you know, it's like when people during the medical nonsense, they went to court and they started quoting Freeman law, you know, law of the land, and the judge was just looking and going, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
I agree.
Take them down, right? Would they not down here? I'm pretty sure they'd look at that ballot and just go, "Oh, chuck that in the bin."
Right. So they're not allowed to chuck it in a bin. It is counted. So just to make sure everyone's aware, it is counted as part of the turnout. So before they look at a single ballot, right? The only problem you've got here is with postal ballots. But before they look at a single ballot, right, they count all the ballots up to get the total number of how many people have voted. That's why they have to count it. But just to make sure I emphasise this to everyone of how important this is, what they term something as, right? So this is the point I want to convey to your audience because it's extremely important. The reason why people are now learning what their real rights are that have been hidden by the state, by the ruling classes, etc., is because of alternative media, which is why I love your channel, right? And I've got so much respect for you because you turned your life around and you said, this is what I'm going to do. You've helped people, etc. That's exactly what I do, right? Except I work at a slightly different level with constitutional law. So I'm a registered paralegal, right? Which, by the way, the barristers and the solicitors don't like because I went another route, right? To say I don't have to take your nonsense oath system or whatever it is that you've done in the background. Solicitors don't even take an oath, right? But I understand this law, and I've studied it for a very long time, the best part of 30 years, and most people know the reason for that. The whole of my point of what I'm trying to say to you is, it's shows like yours. Get away from this nonsense, which you've just pointed out. I mean, again, at the beginning of this chat, you mentioned writing this. We wrote this letter. We compiled it with all the common law, and it was to protect children. And people took that into their schools. They served that as a notice on, and I'm emphasising this, to the headmaster or headmistress, on the tune folder, the form tutor, and everyone then was aware. And then they sent that up the chain. Within 3 to 4 days, the government pulled back and stopped it. Right. So when you got someone who is talking about the real law, right, and you're using documents that are the real law, and you are presenting the real law to a court, and don't forget I stand in front of judges. Again, if you go back to Charlie Staples' case, a high court judge agreed with me. I mean, we're talking about a high court judge, right? That the police are personally responsible, right? And they tried to bring in all sorts of corporate law on why it was just the chief constable. And I argued against it and showed them the legal paperwork, and the judge agreed with me. And again, the police barrister left in a fiery temper, gowns flowing from the courtroom because he'd been beaten by a paralegal that has a passion. It's a bit, again, going back, it's a bit like you've got a passion for fitness, for mental health. If you've got a passion for that, will beat any doctor, right? Because you actually believe in the inner core of the belief of a human being should be healthy, fit, etc. Well, I believe in the inner core and the fundamentals of our constitutional and common law rights, which are God-given rights. That's it. So that's what I would say on that whole subject, really.
Yes, Graeme, I'm just showing a little clip because we should give a shout out and a special thank you to those very few brave veterans that stood up for the kids and stood up for freedom of choice and stood up to these big, medical companies. That was the Global Veterans Alliance, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it was through them circulating the letter that you put together to the schools that really got that amazing result. And they went, oh, hang on, we're not doing that on our school property now.
Yeah, exactly.
And the rest. So, yes. So, and I think with respect to the veterans, it's a shame that it's only the subject of illegal immigration that triggers them. But it is softly catch the monkey, Graeme. That we're talking about some heavy indoctrination there. And
I agree. But just to make sure, Chris, I want to be clear on this. I stand against the political union, and what represents that is the British flag and the Union Jack if it's on a boat, right? And some people don't know the difference between a flag and a jack, right? So just to make sure there is a difference, right? Don't look much difference, but the terminology is there for a reason. Just to make sure everyone listening to, especially if you're anything to do with the military, right? We are, as a group of people, and I don't know whether some of these individuals would come on your show or not, but a lot of ex-special forces are with us, right? And the reason that they trust us is because, one, they can see that the British establishment, the ruling classes, and the prosecutors have turned against them, right? And turning the power of the communist state against them when they was actually operating, being trained by the British to do a job. They did the job. And again, all the people further up the chain, nothing's happening to them. Everyone should understand what I'm talking about. Certain prosecutions, right? But them individuals have come to us, and one or two of them have said to me, if I am charged, would you represent me in a criminal court? And I've said, absolutely. And have we got a constitutional defence? And I have said, absolutely. And to the best of my ability, I will show that jury that they can only find you not guilty, right? And then after that, you sue the people in the chain. So just to make sure everyone's aware, I want to make sure that the military understands, right? When I reference the British, I'm talking about the British regime, the ruling classes, and the oligarch that's in control now, and oppressing and suppressing the nation people. So the English, the Scots, the Welsh, the Irish, the Northern Irish, who, by the way, have the right to self-determination. We've got a seminar out there on the 28th of June, the second one. They're very interested because no one's ever put this option to them. And also the Cornish, right? Because what we've said is we haven't got a problem with you being an independent nation. We respect your culture. We respect that you are Celtic in your origin. But again, everyone needs to have respect. It's called a Brotherhood of Nations. The old way of understanding that is a Commonwealth and dominions, right? So if you're a common law jurisdiction, which Scotland isn't, that's one of the things people have. So just making sure that any veterans that watch this, we respect the military. What we don't respect anymore is obviously the police in terms of who and what they are. If you go back 40 years ago, it was a different group of people. And the people who created that were the politicians. It was Margaret Thatcher that politicised the police. It was the worst thing that they could ever have done. Prior to that, they wasn't a political force, but now they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Graeme, while you were chatting, I was just showing up. We've got an upcoming podcast. By the time you see me and Graeme chatting, folks, this will have gone live because this is on our coming Sunday. But I'm chatting to Des Powell, who's former SAS. Very, very nice guy, Des, and we just get on and have a yap about like parachuting and things of things like that. It's an interesting one, Graeme. Everyone's within their right when you look at the last 20 years, what the military have been used for, to come up with their own. I think we need to stop hero worshipping our military. Let's start treating it for what it is. We were damaged kiddies, most of us from abused, domestic violent backgrounds, alcoholism, etc. This is, I'm just talking from it's very hard to find a veteran, Graeme, that isn't pretty fucked up, or has not had to overcome a lot of stuff in their life. Not everyone's the same, but we made prime recruiting ground for the elite, or whatever we're going to call these psychopaths, And as a result, we were order followers. We didn't question what we was getting sent for, and that's not a criticism. I was 17 when I went down the recruiting office. Christ's sake, what could I have known about life that I know, you know? So
But you know now. I agree entirely.
I'm just saying that, you know, we can question the role of the military. We can question their recruiting pool, and like I said, big shout out to those veterans that did stand up for the kids during the medical nonsense, because somebody had to. And I hope that this podcast like this encourage more veterans to come forward and say, do you know what? We need to say it like it is. The best thing I ever heard about my service, Graeme, is I host a big reunion every year. It's tomorrow, actually. And my mate Eddie turned up once. We was on ship together. A small party of Royal Marines on an aircraft carrier for a year. We sat there at the reunion, and he looked at me, he said, shit, innit? I was like, what? What do you mean? He went, the fucking military. It was shit, Chris, wasn't it? Let's be honest. Most of it was shit. It was boring, working for some people that, you know, you wouldn't really want to, you know, you wouldn't say hello, you wouldn't even say hello to in the street. And he was being, you know, he's allowed to say that. He earned the Green Beret. He can say that if he wants. And a lot of it was like that. It's not what youngsters think. There was some exciting times. It is pretty full on when the lad behind you gets shot 3 times. I can tell you that. But, you know, it's also... it's a great life being a librarian, if that's your thing, you know, or digging the roads or whatever. Anyway, Graeme, moving on then, I'm going to hit you with another spiritual angle, and thank you for what you said about the ballot. I think we need to do another podcast on that right before the next general election, and I agree. And see if we can get the whole country doing it, because it seems like the whole country are not very happy at the moment. Yeah. So my next point, you get your party together, or Nigel Farage gets his Reform together, or all these sort of I'm not comparing you to Reform at all, Graeme. Totally different animal. I get that. Yeah. But I'm just saying that people are looking now for these alternatives. What's to stop your party? Let's just say you slowly work your way into power. And then, you see, I've got to tell a little anecdote, sorry. When I led the Global Veterans Alliance, I say led, you know, I did all the admin, I got it together. I knew spiritual battles, so I knew what's coming down from up there. A lot of the lads, they just rocked up and they did us proud, you know. And a lot of lads worked really hard on it. But here's the thing. I worked for the best part of 2 years, unpaid, taking so much shit, Graeme. You wouldn't believe how toxic the veterans community can be. You'd think we're all this nice brother and sisterhood.
No, I get that.
It was fucking disgusting. The way some veterans conduct themselves. It really. I told you where we come from. You know, the sinking state, the damaged backgrounds, and a lot of people haven't got over that trauma, so they just project it onto others still. You know. Anyway, my point was, why did I give up 2 years unpaid? I spoke to the top some of the top podcasters, some of the top SAS guys in this country. I said, come on, chaps, this is for the kit. And they're like, yeah, Chris, but, you know, and they continued their careers. As a back of it, you know, some of them have got glowing following now. But I remember when I asked them to come and support the kids, Graeme, you know, I did it because I'm on the enlightened path, or at least I'm trying to be.
Yeah. I'll get that. And so you do it for a different reason, Chris.
Mate,
same as me.
It's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter heaven. That is simple. So if I joined your party and, you know, somebody comes up to me, oh, Chris, look, I want you to sign this white paper. It's going to screw a few people over, but we'll be able to destroy a bit of the rainforest and, pollute this and maybe get some 15 minutes. I'd just be like, no, I'm not doing it. There's nothing you can pay me. £30 million. I'm not interested. I don't work for that, man,
Yeah.
Or if they come, oh, Chris, yeah, so you've got a bit of we've dug up this from your past and we're going to blackmail. Fucking do it. My mates will probably laugh their asses off at you, right?
Exactly.
But here's the thing, and I'm not trying to say I'm not human, Graeme, I am, Like I say, I took them podcasts down the other day. I'm still debating whether that was a fear-based decision or whatever, but like I say, I was going to keep them up. I did it for my family. Anyway, what's to stop your crew when you're running the country and the cult, the cabal, they start getting their irons into you and going, oh yeah, we're gonna shape this little Johnny who's up and coming, because do you know what? We've got some footage of him with what he was doing with them kids, and let's just wait till he gets to, not talking about you, Graeme. I'm saying, the progression. Yeah. If we're not fighting spiritual battle, which let's be honest, most people don't. They don't even understand it. They think it's about religion or something, and it's not. I just explained. It's just a biochemical thing in your body. You either take charge of it, or the devil take charge, and you. What's to stop, Graeme, that it all just becoming another corrupted bag of shit like we've got now?
The direct answer to that is, so just to make sure people are aware, I took an oath, and I believe the oath system needs changing in not only as a member of parliament, but the judiciary oath and the military oath, not to the sovereign, but it should be to the constitution in your nation, England, and the rights of the people, right? So the oath system, and by the way, I'm not the only person to say that. Says William Wade, an excellent scholar on the Constitution, stated that in a lecture to the Hamlin lectures, and the lecture was the constitutional fundamentals. First of all, I take an oath. Any person who stands up and is a member of parliament for us, in meaning the party, etc., you're actually standing for your constituents. You're not. We're just a brand, but the brand is important to us, right? So the brand is England, and the manifesto is the English Constitution, your common law rights. How do we stop it from changing? We have created that in such a way with the Electoral Commission, and in effect a trust document that you can't change it. Right, so they're the principles, the core principles. You can have minor policies either way, but this is key to what you've just said. Right, it is unconstitutional to have party whips. It is illegal under our constitution, and they have what's known as a 1, 2, and 3 line whip under the Bill of Rights. That is unlawful, and the reason why they created a 1, 2, and 3 line whip as a code was because they knew it was illegal, right? Well, we tell people that, and we say we haven't got any whips. So you wouldn't have a situation. I'll give you an example. What just happened with Sarah Pouchin, where she turned around to, she said at the Prime Minister's question times, are you going to ban the burqa ban the hijab? Right, so and the whole parliament starts hissing and booing, etc. Well, you're in there as a member of parliament to represent your constituents, not your own views, right? And I can tell you now, the whole of the country are in favour of banning hijab, and many people in European Union countries have already done that, right? And it can be used oppressively, and some religions do that, right? I mean, you can have a habit, for example, as a Christian nun, but you're not forced to wear it. And if you choose 100% that you're not going to wear it, you're not going to be ostracized by the whole Christian community. Whereas in some religions that is the case. So just to make sure you're aware of this. And then you've got Zaya Yusuf, right, who was the chairman of Reform, called her dumb, right, for asking that question. Now, technically, as the chairman of Reform, he's interfering with the decision and operation of a member of parliament for her constituents, right? So he's resigned, right? People need to understand that we as a political party, and by the way, just to make sure I'm on record with this, I don't want to be prime minister, right? All I want to do is represent constituents, and I can do that anywhere. As a leader of the party, I can do that anywhere in the country. And with the constitutional and common law right knowledge, you would get probably one of the best members of parliament that you've ever had for the last 100 years, because I actually know what my job is, right? I have not only read the job spec, right? I have trained for it. That's the first thing. The second thing that's really important about what you've just said, and and I'll finish off what I was saying there. If someone was to say to me, "We want you to be the Chief Justice," I'd say that's a bit of me. Why? Because there's a separation of power, right? And I would then deal with the judiciary. By the way, the last person who did that was Oliver Cromwell, because he didn't just deal with Parliament, he didn't just deal with the monarch, he also dealt with the judiciary. It's because of Oliver Cromwell that he was the one who banned Latin from being used in courts and said, "We're England, you will speak England, our national language, in those courts," right? So that's what I'm trying to say to people. One, we have a trust that's set up to say this is what we stand for, and you can't go outside of that. If anyone who's ever elected for our party was known or was presented as what you're saying is engaging with lobbyists and taking money of a lobbyist, etc., they'd be thrown out of the party. We'd make a statement, but it wouldn't be. We would never say to a member of parliament, under the English Constitution Party's banner, you must say this is party policy. The party policies are the English Constitution. Yeah. That's it, right? So as long as you're standing up for people, you're doing fine by us. And it is let me put it this way. If you've got two different areas, say you've got a constituency, let's say, I don't know, Norfolk, right? You could have a different issue in Norfolk that you've got in Cheshire or Devon or wherever, right? There should never be a centralised policy for all of these areas. That's not the way England operates and operated. We was a distributed governance system, right? And that's what we're advocating to go back to.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, it's not one glove fits all, is it? Because a glove in the south of England won't fit people in Norwich.
No.
Not enough fingers in it. Sorry, folks. Sorry. No, I had an absolutely wonderful time fairly recently on a fundraiser for our Atlantic Row. Mark Scouse-Taylor, bless him, of RAF 5 Mile of Death infamy, bloody raised us a whole load of money up there. He does a lot for people and charities and freedom and veterans. So yes, just a joke, folks. Graeme, listen, I'd love to get into more. I've got my next appointment now, unfortunately. But I think we covered some really good ground. You're a super bloke. Thank you for everything that you're doing. I know that you're genuinely doing the right thing and you're trying to take back what is English for England. And we're not nationalists, mate, are we? We're not, we're not racist. We just recognise that our identity, our community, and our say is being slowly, insidiously drawn, almost ripped out of us.
Correct.
And that these laws that Graeme talks about and this constitution was put there to stop this happening.
Exactly.
Perhaps next time Graeme and I talk, we can talk about the cousinhood, which is something everyone should learn about. Cousinhood goes back to early 1900s. It was a cousinhood headed up, no surprise to everyone, by a certain banking family whose name begins with R. And they slowly, insidiously, they call it the cousinhood because they was all related, and they got all of their merchant class surreptitiously into all the important positions in English Parliament, like Minister for War, Minister for Transport, and then lo and behold, in 150 years later, after we allowed all this to happen, they then saw to it that a ship called Windrush was commissioned by the New Zealand, or is steered by the New Zealand Shipping Company, headed up by the Nathan family. Anyone who's been in Hong Kong will know another merchant family. And that was our first wave of, and I'm going to use the word illegal immigration, because at the time no one knew why the hell it had rocked up on our shores. The subsequent spinning of the narrative, the earwig that people then won't, what I call repeaters, just repeat, is they came to help us rebuild Britain. No, they didn't. No one knew why Windrush rocked up at Tilbury Docks. Worth understanding the cousinhood, folks. But if you want to understand the immigration thing, Graeme, we'll take that one next time. Book in for another chat soon, mate. I mean, I should book in. Let's arrange another chat soon, brother, because I always enjoy talking to you, and I think it's always really productive.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
I'm going to put all your links, Graeme, below the video, but where can people find you? How can they support you?
Well, they can. First of all, we've got two websites. One is the English Constitution Society.co.uk. So that's the society. It's purely educational, and we go out doing seminars all around the country. So if you want us to do a seminar, if you've got a group of people that want to, and you can promote it, and people come and listen to their rights, the government hate it, right? And we've also got the EnglishConstitutionParty.com, and they took down my previous two accounts on Twitter. One had 15,000 followers, the other one had 10,000. We've just restarted again, so it's under English Exit on Twitter. But the channel that they're still attacking it in the ether is on Rumble, and the British government are trying to stop Rumble in the UK. It's been taken down in a number of different countries all around the world. But we're the full English show on Rumble, or Daddy Dragon channel on Rumble. You can search, you'll find that. But come and give us a subscribe. And what we do is talk through. And again, we've got a great health thing. Once a month on a Monday, we have Dr. Glidden from America, who is a naturopathic doctor with 36 years experience, and he's wonderful. You might want to get him on your show.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been really working on my spiritual battleground, getting everything,
Yeah,
my diet's got just radically overhauled it and just stop being weak. Weak is probably not the right word, but I've just had to show a bit of willpower, do the old meditation to think what is right in life, how to walk this this path, and it pays dividends, mate, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just state on the religious front, if you want to call it that. My personal belief: I do not like organised religion. I do not like churches. Right? I believe, as Jesus said, the church is the people. Right? So it's us coming together, whether it's in prayer, whether it's in health, whether it's in politics, to take back what God gives us, That's it. And it's just keep it simple, right? And that's what we do.
Absolutely. Graeme, massive thank you again. Friends at home, you know what I'm going to say. If you can do the like and subscribe thing, please. Click your notification button. If you could share this video. It's all well and good me and Graeme having this yap, but if nobody shares it, no new people get to hear of, what's going on in this once great nation that will be great again.
It will.
So please like, subscribe. That just leaves me to thank you all. Much love, everyone.